All right, everyone, welcome back to another episode of Generation Get To It. Today, we've gone a little bit different to our previous guests. Our guest today, named Tyler Jordan, he is someone who inspires me on the daily, someone who tends to make his own path and do things differently to everyone else, which is exactly why I wanted to get him on, because it may not be an area that you've thought of in particular of going into entrepreneurship, but I think the principles are the main thing which are really important. And a lot of the values that Tyler lives for are ones all about taking risks, trying something new, never giving up, and just making sure that he lives his life to the absolute fullest. To give a kind of general idea of what he's done before, Tyler's actually a skydiver. He did skydiving lessons years ago. And some of these clips that I've seen on his Instagram and everything are just absolutely nuts. But Tyler's someone who has just, like I said, just picked up his stuff, moved across the world and done some really, really cool things. And I'd love for him to do a lot of the talking when it comes to his story. But yeah, without further ado, welcome to the podcast, Tyler.
Thank you, mate. It is an honor to be here. As I said to you before, this is I've done over 150 podcast episodes as a host, and this is the first podcast I've ever been a guest on. So I kind of don't know how to handle myself. I don't know what to do. I'm going to probably try and take charge every 5 seconds, so please stop me. Yeah, thank you. It's awesome to be here.
Well, yeah. Well, the thing is, like, funnily enough, so my other first guest appearance on a podcast was actually on Tyler's, was on yours. And yeah, in many ways, that was like a kind of the first movement towards me thinking, oh, wouldn't it be cool if I had my own thing like this? So yeah, man, feelings mutual. It's an honor. But of course, I really just want to get you on here to tell you a bit about your story and why you've come to be who you are, because yeah, quite frankly, it's really, really cool. So yeah, if you just want to give us a bit of background about, where you kind of started from and how you got to the place you are now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. So I mean, currently I'm currently living in the USA. I'm in Nashville today, but I kind of bounce around here, there, and everywhere. I wouldn't really say that I have a home base, so to speak, kind of in different places for a few months and then moving on. But I've been in the US for the last 2 years now, but I'll be coming back to Oz soon. My background is actually, I mean, I don't know how far we're going to go back. Do you want me to go back all the way?
All the way back to the beginning.
All the way. I mean, I grew up in an extremely fruitful and fortunate family. My dad was a professional athlete, racing superbikes. My mum was the best, the greatest mum ever. She raised us all, and she was working different jobs and doing different things as well. So I basically grew up racing motocross, kind of flunking at school a little bit, if you will. I was a smart kid, but I never enjoyed the academic side of school. I kind of just breezed through it. Now I dropped out of school when I was 16. Didn't make it through year 10. I dropped out. I said, this isn't for me. Mum and dad both completely accepted that and said, we have no worries and no qualms with you whatsoever. School's not for you, and we don't have any worry that you're going to be the typical high school dropout. So dropped out of school, just worked construction basically. Absolutely, really, really enjoyed construction. I was working in civil construction with earth movers, bulldozers, diggers, things like that, and did that on and off until I was around 23 years old. Now, when I say did that on and off, I did spend the better part of 3 years traveling the world, just kind of living it up as a late teenager and early 20s. I visited close to 30, or I think it was around 30 countries, went all over the world and did some incredible things and met some incredible people and, just have all these experiences. But basically came home, got back into construction, realized that, this isn't for me, especially not on the employee side, and basically made a decision that this isn't what I'm going to do. I'm going to work for myself. I'm going to pursue the things that challenge me and light me on fire, because that's what life's about. Life's about doing things that light your soul on fire. So packed up my stuff. I went all in, complete do or die, and come over to the US. I came over to the US with a girl who is my girlfriend Madison, who is from the US, and we've been living here ever since. I now basically run. I actually have three companies now, and basically traveling the US full time. And as of next week, it will be traveling globally full time, basically acquiring and developing real estate, and teaching people to leave their 9-to-5s as well. So it's been one hell of a journey, and yeah, I guess that's where I am today. So that was the quick 3-minute overview of where we're at. And I know that was quite a roller coaster.
Yeah, mate, I can't even give up.
It feels fake, is what it feels.
Yeah, well, it's just amazing to see like how what seemed like really big decisions, like when you go from like where you were, like high school dropout, 16 years old, to working in a very, common job as just being like kind of working construction and doing civil stuff, to now being a guy who's running 3 different companies. And the day you told me about today just sounds like the most insane day. Like before we started this conversation, just catching up because it's been a little while. And he's had about 48 meetings in the last 12 hours, and he's been to 20 different houses and just checked out all this different stuff and meeting some of the more inspiring people in the world. So it's just amazing to see that, someone from humble Wollongong, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, Wollongong. Yeah, has gone out there and just kind of done all this really cool stuff and living this huge dream over in the States. But yeah, I wanted to go into like that kind of moment where you realize that you wanted to actually go and try something bigger and not live this 9-to-5 life you spoke about.
Yeah, I guess for me it was a decision, and I had to do some reflecting on essentially, what means the most to me, and then also what's the worst outcome. So the decision here was, do I continue being an employee? I had an incredible boss, who is actually one of my best friends. His name's Tom. An incredible company called Unicivil. I had an unbelievable job. It was so cruisy. I got to do what I want. I got to be where I want. It was unbelievable. But it was just the fact that I wasn't running my own life that really it got under my skin a lot, and I couldn't deal with it. It was really bothering me a lot. And no matter how much freedom I was given, no matter how much, flexibility, it didn't matter, or how much money, I realized that, I started going down that money route, where I started having meetings after meetings after meetings, thinking, I just need more money. I just need more money. I just need more money. I need more flexibility. And I just kept needing more and more and more. And it got to a point where I was like, I don't think I actually do need more. I think what I need is I need to do something for me, for myself. And once I made that realization, my question was, what's worse? Is it going out on my own, giving it everything I've got, and falling completely flat on my face and just completely flunking? Is that worse? Or is it worse to just continue going down this route of being an employee and kind of, going through the motions? And I basically came to the conclusion that there isn't anything in my mind that is worse than continuing the path that I'm on, because it's slowly, like just little bit by little bit, eating away at me as a human being. And there is nothing worse than that in my head than a slow death. So I basically was just like, I'm going all out. So I made a deal with myself. I still had the notebook today, and the notebook said, I'm basically going to save up a certain amount of money, and then once I save up that money, I'm out of here, and I'm just going to give it everything I've got. And so I did exactly that. I had $50,000 Australian to my name. I hit $50,000, and I gave my boss far pre-warning. It was like, I'm at 30K, I'm at 40K, I'm out.
Yeah.
And I packed up and left, and that was it. So just made it work. Now, spoiler alert, because in my head I was like, $50,000 is going to get me so far. And I got over to I came to the States, and what I didn't think about was the exchange rate. So once I transferred 50,000 to the US, I got about 30,000 in US dollars after the exchange and fees and everything. I was like, okay, so I've almost just halved my money. And then for us to get set up in the US, cost us about 20K. So then I was left with 10K within about a month. And, from me thinking that 50K was going to last me 2 years, it went in a month. And I had 10K left for groceries and rent. And that 10K was gone within the next month. So it's been a fun ride. It's been pretty wild.
So where did you first move to when you went to the States?
So I flew into New York with Maddie, and we then drove over 2 weeks. We drove down to Austin, Texas, stopping in Nashville, where I am today, and stopping in different places along the way. But we went all the way down to Austin, Texas. We stayed in Austin, Texas for about a year and a half. From there, we moved up to Philadelphia in Pennsylvania, and then we're actually heading home back to Australia in a couple of weeks. But just before I go, I've made a trip down to Nashville for a couple of weeks to do some business. So
yeah. So where have you spent most of your time, and why did you find yourself going between so many different places?
I apologize. You cut out a little bit there. Why did I find myself going between?
So how come? So sorry. First of all, where did you spend most of your time when you're living in the States, and why did you find yourself going between so many different places? Say from New York down to Nashville, Philadelphia. How come that?
So I spent most of my time in Austin, Texas, just because that was where we decided to set ourselves up. And why can't we stay in one place? Just because I get bored. I think for me, it's a case of I believe a life well lived is how much life have you lived, right? How many people have you met? How many experiences have you had? How many places have you visited? How broad is your experience? So I tend to feel very guilty staying. That's probably not the right word, but I tend to get very antsy after a few months. And I want to experience more, and I want to see more places and meet new people, and do more things. So I'm constantly on the go. Kind of just I don't know.
Yeah, no, the reason I ask is because I've been very similar too, where I've moved into so many different places.
Five moves in the last 5 weeks.
Oh mate, I'll see if I can add up how many times I've moved since I finished uni. So I moved from the country. I moved from Nowra down up to Sydney. Still stayed in Sydney for 4 years, only because I had university. And then from there, I moved to London. Then I moved to Norway and lived in Malta, and then Oslo. And then moved back to Australia because of COVID. And then I was meant to go to Perth, but ended up in Adelaide. And then I ended up moving back to New South Wales. And then now I'm up in the Gold Coast. But because the reason I wanted to kind of ask you, because I'm curious, because I know my kind of reasoning why, which is actually, to be fair, very similar to yours, which is I just chase experiences. I'm just getting so excited. The thought of meeting new people and trying something completely different and being in unfamiliar environments is really exciting for me. And so I to catch up with you, because you're obviously moving to different places, but you're also trying different businesses, meeting lots of new people, challenging yourselves in ways which I definitely wouldn't have the same experience if you just stayed in Wollongong. And we both love Wollongong, but it doesn't have all these different things that you want to in your life. And I think trying somewhere new. Like, you don't have to move every bloody 6 weeks like us two, but like you do, I do think recommend it's something that everyone should do in their life, and that is actually to move somewhere, get a new outlook, a new perspective. And I think it really grounds you in many ways, because you've also lived overseas too. I mean, so not just this time, but you spent some time over in the state, in North America before this occasion, didn't you?
I mean, yeah, I've lived in, I think it's like 10 or 15 countries now. But yeah, been in a few places. Went to Canada. I lived in Canada, Japan, Europe, the UK, sort of a little bit here, there, and everywhere.
Yeah, well, I think it's cool. Like, you've just kind of taken.
You know what it is as well. You know what it is. One of the things that
What?
you mentioned is chasing experiences, and I think that it's so one of the things I'm always hyper aware of is how mature somebody is and how, I guess, wise somebody is. And there's some people that are so wise when they're so young, which is something that I find in yourself and a few others. And I think that being wise, that doesn't come from old age. That comes from life lived. And it's people like yourself who have, gone out and done what most people, or had experiences that most people wouldn't have in 50 years, in your 20s, that gives you that kind of that aspect that you're so much wiser than, your peers at 25, 26, 27 years old.
Yeah, because how old are you now?
26.
26, yeah. So like you've done some shit and you're 26, which is great. And I think the main thing though is the fact that like you don't have to wait until, sorry, if you haven't done it now and you 29, 30, I think there's still time to go out and do all this kind of stuff and actually make that change yourself and start living these new experiences. Because like you, do you have any chance of settling down in the next couple of years?
No. I mean, intentfully, I don't really want to settle down, so to speak. We want to get married and we want to have kids. We want to build a family. That's our biggest goal. But settling down, so to speak, isn't really on our radar. We're kind of setting up our life so that we can expose our kids to world travel and an unbelievable amount of interactions with different people.
Interesting. So, well, I just want to go back to kind of where you started a bit, because you mentioned that you were actually in a very comfortable position at your job, and you said like you were kind of, it seemed like what you asked for, you kind of got. But it seems like you've gone from like, the recliner chair and a really good job, flexible hours and everything like that, and then you've suddenly gone and just essentially moved outside and grabbed one of those cheap Bunnings chairs and just kind of sat in that, being like, well, I'm going to live a bit uncomfortable, but at least I know I'm going
Great
to be outside
analogy.
well. Yeah. Thank you. I've been saving that one.
Well executed. I feel like you set that up yourself.
But does that make sense though? Like, it was something like you were in a position that for many people would have been just like, oh, I'm happy to kind of relax here and enjoy this. But then you realize that there was possibly a greater vision to what you're doing. Yeah,
I mean, that's definitely the big piece here, is that there's a greater vision. The other part is that comfort isn't satisfying. Comfort is something that we're always striving towards, and we're always trying to become more comfortable. We're always trying to earn more money, get a bigger house, have more friends, have more employees. We're constantly striving for comfort and for things that will allow us to let off the gas pedal. But I guess what I found was, when I got to a situation that for me at the time was super comfortable, I just found myself becoming less satisfied. And I know throughout my life that every time I've been super uncomfortable and challenging myself and in this state where I'm reaching for something that, is beyond my capabilities, is when life's the hardest. but it's also the most satisfying and the most fulfilling. And I basically realized that I'm at peak comfort right now. Now peak comfort, from like, if I was in that situation now, I'd be like, damn, like, how were you even comfortable in that situation? You had near enough no money, and you didn't have X, Y, and Z and all those things. But at the time, that was peak comfort, and I just found that the more comfortable I was getting, the less fulfilled I was, and just slowly chipping away at my soul and my drive and my hunger and my aspirations and all these things was kind of just bottling up a little.
Yeah. So I want to talk about the journey of how you got from that position to where you are now, because I remember our conversations over the years, and like, well, both of us, but definitely just if we were going to refer to you, like there was sometimes we'll catch up and you'd be like, well, this has changed and this has changed. And I'm going through this difficult situation. And there was one time I called you up and you're like, oh yeah, I just saw a shooting down the road just 2 minutes ago. So like you've been in some situations. So like what are some of the key factors that have gone into your life to get you from, that position you were there before to where you are now? Like, what was it?
In regards to how do I not get comfortable?
Well, how about like if you refer to some of the traits you've had to use and bring to forefront of yourself, and also some of the skills that you've learned along the way too?
I think for me it's the it's actively putting yourself in situations that are beyond your capabilities. So, putting yourself in a situation that even yourself, you lay in bed at night and you think, holy shit, what have I done? I think that it's becoming consciously aware that that isn't a bad thing, and that that's actually where the juice of life lies. And it's hard, because even once you understand that that's where the juice of life is, it's really hard to then consciously put yourself in that situation, because it's uncomfortable. It's kind of like why most people don't work out, because working out is uncomfortable. Even though we know that, it's the best way to feel good about yourself is to go through the discomfort of working out and eating healthy and these types of things. And it's no different with anything in life. If you know that you're going to feel better after having that really difficult conversation with your boss or your spouse or, a friend of yours, whatever it might be, you're going to feel better, but it's really hard to have that difficult conversation because it's uncomfortable. So I think for me, it was this gradual progression of getting comfortable being uncomfortable, and kind of convincing myself and, accepting that discomfort is really a good thing and it's not a bad thing. Obviously, as long as it's positive discomfort. I'm not talking about don't go out and snap your leg on purpose. That's not funny. Nor is
You've done that, haven't you?
Yeah. But just putting yourself in situations that challenge you and are bigger than what you believe that you can do. It really is where everything goes. But it's hard to do. It's
great phrase. Great phrase you use there with the get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Because I find, like I said, that a lot of times we feel that discomfort is meaning that something is bad, when in many cases it's that type of stress which is going to help push you towards your goals. So that, I think they call it eustress, like EU stress, is where it's actually that stress that's going to be in the sweet spot in terms of allowing you to actually improve. Like like when it comes to working out, you want to give yourself a bit of stress, you want to work a little bit hard, but you don't work too hard, so you're not going to be able to walk the next day, but you want to give yourself a bit of a stimulus where your muscles are a bit sore and you go, okay, I've learned that that's a good level of stress for me, because I know that if I have a little bit of rest now, I'm going to improve on top of that. So it seems like what you've done is put yourself in situations which I'm sure you've learned over the years of what is too bold and what is not bold enough, but finding that position where you are feeling a bit discomfort, you've put yourself in a situation where you're going to learn something new out of this and continue on from that.
let me ask you something. What is too bold?
Great question. Well, I think it's relative, but I do believe that something too bold would be something which is going to inhibit you for a very long term after the experience. So say, for example, putting yourself in a situation where you know, have a financial, there's a financial aspect to it. If you put yourself into a position where you lose a bit of money out of it, that's okay. But if you're going to put yourself into like 30 years of debt with massive regrets, I'm sure that's probably a bit too bold. But I'd love to hear what you kind of think of that as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. I to some degree think differently. I do think that you're right in well, there is neither of us is right or wrong, but I agree in some capacity to what you're saying. I also, what you've just explained as being too bold is exactly what I'm doing, to a very large extent, and I really do think that that's a positive thing. You know, putting yourself in a situation where you want to do something and putting yourself in a situation where, you know, you've got to make something work is, I don't think it's practical. Putting yourself in a situation where you must do something or it's game over, I believe is practical. So my suggestion for myself, because I know and have learned how I operate, is putting myself in situations where if I don't get the outcome that I need, I would rather not be here. For instance, I actually would put myself and have put myself in so much financial debt that if I don't put this off, like my life would be there would be no point being here, because I just would be in such a deep hole that I would never be able to get out of it. And it's a very different experience when you must do something compared to when you are just chasing something or you just want something. So I think that it also depends on who you are as a person. But for the most part, I do believe that we should put ourselves in situations where it's essentially do or die.
Yeah, like swim or die, throw yourself straight in the ocean and just see if you can actually swim to the surface.
Yeah,
Mate,
I mean,
yeah.
Sorry, I was just going to say, I wrote about this in a tweet the other day, and I said, and I'm going to try and quote it here just off memory, but I said something like, I believe that people invest in me because I invest in myself, fully and completely invest in myself. I invest in myself because I know that I am all in, do or die. And I said, I'm all in, do or die because I have to make it work. Now, on the off chance and in some way, shape or form that somewhere down the line, I don't make it work and I die trying, that's also a win, because I've given my whole being to something and I've gone out giving 150% to something, which is something that, I mean, isn't that what life is? Life is living with 100%, intent and going all in on everything that you love and going all in on life. So even if I fail and I die, I've done something that 99.9% of the population of existence will never do, which is go all in on something. And it's a very different experience. And I don't know that it can be understood until you've put yourself in a position where you pull it off or you die.
That's I was going to ask you about that, because was there any point during, the last 10 years or from that, when you were 16 and moving on, that you ever thought that you'd have this desire to make these huge risks and really put everything on the line like that?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's just been a kind of a natural evolution. I can't say that I've ever been a cautious kid or a cautious person ever. I was the kid that famously visited every hospital on every family trip. But it's yeah, I don't know. I think it's just been a natural progression of pushing the boundaries so far beyond what is deemed acceptable by society, and realizing that the worst outcome isn't that bad. Like the worst outcome for almost anything is not even remotely that bad. I mean, for instance, like if you go out right now, you quit everything you're doing and you try and start a business, and you go all in on it. You talk to every single one of your friends. You try and have all of your friends sign up, all of your family members. They all say no, and basically all say no, like we don't want anything to do with this. You're in the same position you were before. You might just have a little bit less money, but you now have a whole lot more confidence in how well you can execute and how much you can do and how much you can overcome. You know, it's like, even it goes back to like even like social anxieties and things like that. It's, you know, it's putting yourself in a position where, you know, maybe going and knocking on random strangers' doors and asking them for $50,000 of investment, right? It's terrifying. That is so terrifying. But like, what's the worst case scenario? The worst case scenario in our heads is horrific. But if I actually ask you what the worst case scenario is and say, tell me what it is, you start to think about it and you're like, well, they say no. And I'm in the same position I was in anyway. And if they say yes, I have $50,000 of investment into, you know, just theoretically. So I think it's just pushing so far beyond societal norms and realizing that even when it goes as bad as it can go, it's not that bad.
Yeah, I'm not sure about everyone else listening, but that definitely gives me like a little butterfly, like very nervous about just like, it's incredible to see like how broad you think and how you know the breadth that you think in terms of what's really possible. And I think it comes from the fact that, like I said, you've had what's along the way, some small risks, which have eventually gone into bigger and bigger and bigger risks. And you put yourself in a situation where it's either do or die, and you've just had to think like that. So it's almost like, yeah, you've kind of broken through every shell that's ever been put in front of you by taking the next risk and going a lot bigger and bigger. Because what I really want to know, like, what's the big goal in terms of what you want to achieve with all this risk taking and entrepreneurship, and just from your own personal benefit as well?
To live more life than anyone that I know, or to live more life than anyone that I could imagine.
Okay.
I know that's probably, I know you probably wanted a big answer, but that's it. I don't have one. That's it. I want to live more than I want to be the person on the planet who has just lived so much life. I want to be the person that's become a billionaire and become homeless and a billionaire, and someone who's been put in jail and, you know, lived in mansions, and, you know, just I just want to live a shit ton of life, and I'm excited about it. And I think that's what I want. That's my goal.
Great answer. No, I think that sounds pretty big. I don't think many people have ever wanted to be homeless, but
I
know what you mean. I know what you mean. Yeah. But that's great, man. Like, I absolutely love it. Like, it's very inspiring, because although not everyone is going to go out there and move country and take these huge risks, I do think there is an element of everyone can probably take a little bit more risks to achieve the things which they do desire. Because, like, if thinking personally, there's some things I'd be like, well, if I continue working, you know, this job that I was doing when I was 22, 23, I reckon if I just kept doing that for the next 10 years, I'd probably get to X goal. But if I take some bigger risks now and try new things and do all these different lessons, I'll probably get there a bit quicker. But more importantly, I would have increased the range of experiences I've had in different areas and met new people, tried new things. And, you know, you never know the different relationships you build and things like that way. Like the way that we met was just through a few, like I'd met, because we ended up meeting at the run club in Wollongong, the 440. But the only reason I got there is because I remember it was during COVID, we had this men's health group that we used to do in Kiama. And I turned up and I met one of our mutual friends, Kobe. And I do remember he kind of getting along with him really well. And he's like, oh, you should come to the run club. We got up to the 440. And that's where I met you. But I wouldn't have ever got there if I didn't try this thing, which seemed really uncomfortable for me to go to, which was the men's health club. And I just felt like that was kind of like one thing that led to another, which has led to many, many other things that have happened in life. But it wouldn't have happened unless I took that small risk.
Mm.
Does that make sense? Yeah.
No, you're 100%.
Yeah. So I do think like we've got to make sure you really get out there and try these new things, and you never know what one small decision is going to lead to. And I think one small decision, it just compounds and compounds and compounds and compounds, and to the point you go, this is completely unrecognizable to what I was doing before. And I think that's something that we definitely need to do more of. It's not about packing up your bags and moving across country tomorrow, but it's all about like, maybe if I just moved a little bit further away, or maybe if I tried this different career or job that I've been thinking of for a long time, or maybe I even just started going to a run club, and you start meeting people, you start learning more information, you start creating these new experiences, which are all in all helping change your character and improving not just your kind of well-being, but also just giving you so many more options to create more well-being and to be able to be more happier in the future. I do think there's something inspiring about just the people you meet along the way doing that.
100%. And I think that I guess what I take from that, and I guess what resonates with me for what you've just said, is that when we think about taking risks and the societal norms of I guess what we're taught and what we're sort of led to believe and sort of brainwashed to think is that risks are usually very physical things that happen, jumping off a cliff, or, I don't know, doing a backflip, or whatever it might be. And, even with our careers, we, even just in this conversation, someone might be listening right now and be thinking, okay, what kind of risks can I take to be able to do better at my job, or whatever it might be, and or maybe I'll get another job, or whatever it might be. But what I think the underlying thing here is, you should be taking risks within yourself and not having a linear path, right? So if you're a chiropractor, you don't get so hung up on constantly shutting everything else out and trying to just take risks down this linear path. You should be taking risks within yourself and just be open to where that leads. Because depending on your level of awareness is dependent on where you lead. And you need to take risks to, have a higher level of awareness and a broader, mind and experience, and then once you have that, that path will open up new doors. Now, did I think that I would be doing, millions and millions of dollars worth of international real estate at 26? Absolutely not. Not even remotely did I think that. I left Australia 2 years ago because I was hell-bent on becoming a successful stock trader, right? And through that journey of trying to continually elevate myself, it's opened different doors that are aligned with the new person that I am, right? Whereas if I was just hell-bent on trading and just shut out trying to take risks on me personally, and I was just trying to take risks in my trading, I would still be down that path. And, I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but my preferred way of living is take risks within yourself and be open to where the new doors that open are, that are, in line with who you are becoming. Because doing what I'm doing today wasn't available to who I was 3 years ago, or even 2 years ago, but it's available to who I am tomorrow, like today. And the fantastic thing is, like, the door that's going to be open in 6 months for the person that I am then, if I continue taking risks within myself to level up, who knows what that's going to look like. But I'm open to it. I'm not going to stick to this linear path and shut everything else out just because I chose it. It needs to expand, and it needs to evolve, and it needs to get bigger and broader and greater.
So what would you say to someone now if they were thinking, oh, I don't know about this. I do feel like I need to take a risk, but I don't know how to do it. And what else would you say to the person who is taking a big risk and they're really feeling like this may be a bad decision?
I mean, do it. I mean, worst case scenario, I mean, the grander the decision and the grander the consequences, the better the story. I mean,
Really?
if everything goes wrong, you are going to have one hell of a story. And I think that's worst case scenario. And we can always come back from it. I mean, and it bugs me because I can't grasp the concept that we are infinite. And that's the way that most people think. So it's like when we think about doing something, we think about the risk and we're like, oh, you know, that's going to be really, you know, that's going to really affect me and it's going to be terrible and, you know, yada, yada. But if you take a step back, you know, you're going to be dead soon anyway. Like none of it's going to matter. You know, if you lose all your money, you're still going to die. If you make all your money, you're still going to die. If you get the girl, you're still going to die. If you don't get her, you're still going to die. Like we're all going to the same place. Right. And I don't understand and I can't grasp why it matters what happens in the midterm, because I mean, well, I understand why it matters, but you know, the risk side of things is like the ultimate risk is you die. And the crazy part is you're going to die anyway. So what's the point? You know, everyone's trying to get to death's door as safely as they can, which is silly because you're going to die.
There is something unique about you, that's for sure, Tyler.
Yeah,
I love
sorry. I'll be honest, I'm surprised it took this long for me to talk about death. Maddie is so sick of it. She's so, every day I wake up and she's like, it's a great day. I'm like, we might be dead tomorrow. And she's like, why? Like,
you're ruining it. I do remember you got me onto this app a couple of years ago, which was, I can't remember what it's called. Yeah, it's like, I think it's like what, like 5 times a day they just remind you of death. Like there's a quote which comes up and it's like, just remember you will die someday. And I went, fuck this. So I deleted it. I was like, it's too much for me. But you loved it, absolutely loved it.
I think it's great. I think for me, I think it grounds me to a large degree, a very large degree. I mean, it makes me so happy. You know, to the point where an exercise that I do, and again, this is not for everyone, but I could not recommend it enough. When I was about 18 years old, I might have even been younger, I might have even been 17 or 16, but I decided one day just on Microsoft Word that I was going to write out my will as if I was going to die within the next 6 months. And I allocated everything. I was like, this is the person that gets ownership of this account. This is what happens here. This is the person that I would like to read my eulogy. I would like it to say this, you know, this is what I want to happen. Went through the whole lot, you know, what I want my legacy to be, etc. And I actually rewrite my will every 6 months. So I take an hour or two, usually on flights, and I spend time, I reallocate all my accounts, where every asset's going to go, every dollar, my legacy, who's going to be at my funeral, who's going to, you know, what are people likely going to say, how I want things to be spent, like go through the whole deal. And it sounds really sadistic and it sounds terrible. It sounds like a really emotional experience, but it's really not. It's actually possibly the most profound experience that I've ever stumbled across in my life. And it juices me so full of life and gratitude and just no holds barred passion for living for at least the next 6 months. And I truly recommend giving it a go. Don't judge it until you've tried it, is what I'll say.
I think that well, to be fair, it with all practices, and they're not all for everyone, but for some people. So for some people, they could actually find that super liberating, as opposed to, say, writing out your goals every day or doing something in particular, which is, pushed a lot by other entrepreneurs. But I think it's really good to see two different sides of the same coin. As we said at the start, like a lot of times you have different perspectives which are going to help change your life, and then that could just be the thing which is going to help someone. So I was going to ask you another method, but I think that we can all just kind of sit on that one and think, is this right for me? Could this be something that I could do in the future? And if you want to, because there are so you can Google practices anywhere, like how to be more inspired and everything, but I'm just going to let everyone sit with that one and think, is this right for me? Will this be beneficial? And if it's not, then like with everything else, just discard it, think about something else. So I think that's great. But
how do you feel about death? Like, I know that it's something that we've talked about a lot. You said you had to delete the app. Like, what's your experience with it, and how does it? Yeah, I guess the question is, like, how do you feel about it?
I have thought about it recently. So everyone's like, are you afraid of death, and is death scary? I kind of think the opposite, in terms of like, I'm afraid of not living. And so therefore, am I afraid of death because of that? Because I really want to just, like I said, live life as much as possible every day and for as long as possible, quote unquote. But I think there's a uniqueness to not living forever. Like, I think you really do need to I think it's really important we have, like, quote unquote, a clock on how long we can actually live for, because if you live for 1,000 years, you'd probably dilute your life by 1,000 years. But if you live for, I'm only going to live for the next, 87, 88 years altogether, then I'm going to live 88, 87 years worth of life and try maximize as much as possible. So I don't really have like an exact kind of like, oh, I'm scared of death in many examples. I just want to make sure that what I'm doing is actually going to contribute to my life, and I'm going to feel like I'm accomplishing, I'm providing positive, I'm adding to the room rather than taking away, in terms of like adding to people's lives and not creating like a negative experience for other people, and just making sure that what I'm doing is just for the benefit of not just myself but everyone else. But I think one thing that when it comes to death, I'm definitely afraid of other people dying, in terms of like, I'm afraid of family dying, good friends dying. I just think that, my pet's dying. Like, that's what scares me. The kind of how death can take someone away close to you. But in terms of myself, it's different, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, I think being consciously aware of it, though, in as often as you can, allows enriched relationships. So for instance, like I try and always think about other people dying. I know it sounds terrible, but I'm different when that happens. So I'm hugging people tighter. I'm listening more intently. I'm more genuine with my words. I'm more enthusiastic to hear someone's story and to help somebody out. And I'm constantly like, this might be the last time. How can I make it the best time? And I think that that's one of the reasons that the relationships that I do have in my life are so rich, is because, like, if we never speak again, Jordan, I want to make sure that, you've had an unbelievable experience, and that I've really, had some sort of a positive experience, but also selfishly, I want to get as much out of this relationship as I can, or this interaction. If this is going to be the last one, I want to listen to some of the things that you're going through, and I want to, I want to give you as many compliments as I can, because in hopes that you might think about them over the coming 24 hours, and that enriches me. And so I think that, I don't know, maybe I have a unique perspective on it. I don't know, but that's kind of, that helps me with my relationships for sure. It definitely brings relationships. It allows the ability to go really deep, really fast.
I really like that. I do. I really like that spin that you put on it. It's very positive. And to be honest, I agree. And I agree. And I'm going to start adopting that mindset too, because like you said, like you just want to provide so much to other people, especially the ones that you care about. And you want to say, like, if something was to happen soon, then I gave as much as I could to make sure that they enjoyed their life and made sure that they felt fulfilled and that they were doing the right thing by themselves as well. So brilliant. On that, I want to kind of just check in with a few things that you're doing coming up and what your kind of plans are. So like, as we were speaking about before, you have a bit of a community that kind of backs a lot of the stuff that you do. Like what's your goal with what you're doing with your business and yeah, in the near future? How can people as well possibly get involved in your community and hear about more what you do?
For sure. Yeah, so the parent company here is called the Nova Haus, spelled NOVA HAUS. And what we do is we build high-end luxury real estate around the world for entrepreneurs, executives, remote workers, and high achievers, which I assume anyone listening to this is fits into that category in some way, shape, or form. Basically, for people who want to travel and who want to live this new way of life, where you're not a tree, you don't have roots. You should be transient and you should be moving around and experiencing new people and new things. And I think that's where life is lived. So we're creating the real estate for that, where you can become a member of the club. You get access to these properties in different parts of the world. And when you stay there, you have a really nice place to stay. You've also got a really high-end workspace where you can get your work done, if you're remotely working. And anybody that you meet and anybody else who is staying in these properties are people that are like-minded and people that are living this life as well. And they're people that you want to network with and that you want to run into. So that's our goal. And I definitely dare say that we're executing on that pretty heavily. So we've got 3 properties currently. So 3 properties this year. We'll add another 9 to the portfolio next year. And then, we'll start scaling it from there. So the goal is within 10 years to have over 100 properties in over 20 countries, so that no matter where you are and no matter what you're doing, there's always a location that's near you that you can book. And then on the flip side of that, if you are somebody who is an accredited investor and wants to get involved, we actually partner with accredited investors on these deals and actually let people into these deals and basically cash flow them for life. So the goal is essentially that you can live this life where you're traveling the world, you're meeting extraordinary people, and you're actually invested into this real estate all over the world that's massively cash flowing and bringing you a significant amount of money to continue to live this life. So that's kind of the hamster wheel that we're on, and it's extraordinarily challenging, and it's also extraordinarily fulfilling. So kind of our tagline is that we're changing the way that the world lives, works, and connects. And yeah, super excited about it.
Great. Well, like I said before, this podcast is about community, and it seems like you've founded and creating a community which a lot of people really want, and that in many cases many people are moving towards. So it's very inspiring to see that you've got this community which is new and exciting and innovative, and you're out there just kind of embracing it, using all your passion and as many resources as you can to actually get this thing started. Because like I said, without the first person to take the first step, then there's not going to be any movement towards the goal. So very inspiring. I've got to say, it gets me excited. It gets me very excited.
Well, I'm building it for people like you. I mean, that's the whole purpose. I mean, you sort of went over before how we met and how we came together through like-minded individuals and all of these different aspects that brought us together. And I mean, if you really boil it down, all I'm trying to do is force those connections. So instead of just like wandering through life going, oh, I wonder when the next cool person I'm going to meet is, or like when's my next best friend going to come along? I'm like, I'm just going to bring it to life so that, you know, I can just next time I want to meet my best friend or the next incredibly cool person, I just go to a location where I've built exactly that. So, I mean, that's the goal is I want to meet more people like you, Jordan. You know, the connection that we have, the person that you are, the relationship that we have, all of the things that you're doing, the knowledge that you have, the passion for life, all of these things that you embody. I'm essentially just trying to recreate spaces that foster and house that so that, you know, you can just get as much of that fix as you wish at any point.
Brilliant. So I just want to finish on one more question, Kate, before we kind of wrap up. But one question I ask everyone as we're finishing up, one thing I ask every guest is, what was something that stuck out for you personally, growing up in your family and with friends, that you'd like to pass on to your kids, nieces, nephews, or just your friends in general?
Ooh. What's one thing from my childhood that stuck out to me that I want to pass on to my...
for the next generation?
I think it's, I know this is silly, talk to strangers.
Elaborate, please.
Yeah, my parents were huge on talking to strangers. So, you know, they instilled in me that, you know, you shouldn't demonize people unless they prove to you that that's how they should be or that's who they are. You know, you should just sort of, you know, be hyper aware, but assume the good in everyone, and actually go out and meet as many people as you can, and interact with as many people and have all these experiences, because, you know, the key to everything in life is people. You know, if you want to start a business, how do you run a business? People. How do you sell within a business? People. How do you find love? A person. How do you have a sport that you enjoy? People. Like, every single thing in life is people, right? So you cannot move forward cutting back on relationships and communication. So, you know, within reason. Now don't get me wrong, my parents never pushed me down a back dark alley and said, go talk to that homeless man that's, you know, asleep by the dumpster. That was never the case. But I mean, in situations like, I was always heavily encouraged to talk to as many people as I can. You know, anytime we would go out to the shops or we go shopping, we'd walk into a store and my dad would push me to go and talk to everyone in that store. We could be in a clothes shop. We could be anywhere. We could be at Bunnings. We could be wherever. And it was just talk to people. You never know who you're going to be talking to. And I mean, without, other than people, there isn't anything in life. There is nothing in life other than people. So go lean in heavy onto people, because that's everything for life.
Who knows, that homeless man by the dumpster might be the next Tyler Jordan, who is also going to be the next billionaire. So
maybe. I am impressed. You brought that full circle. That was incredible.
Mate, go lap it around. No, I love that. I think that's such a great lesson, which is often not talked about. So fantastic.
Can I end with a question?
Yeah.
I want to ask you, what are you finding as the most challenging and also the most fulfilling part of this podcast? Because it's very difficult to do a podcast. Very difficult. I've experienced it. It's so hard.
It is difficult. The challenging and rewarding. They probably could be honestly the same thing, because I'd say the most challenging part is got to do with like the questions that you ask and the direction of the podcast, because as you're aware, like we have a time limit on how long, like I could speak to every single guest all day nonstop and just enjoy the whole conversation. But I'm thinking, what's the most value I'm going to get out of the question? And is this question also going to benefit the person that is answering, because I could just keep asking questions and keep learning new lessons and just be really, really inspired by everything that you say. But to an extent, I want the person that's on the other end of the question to think, oh, that was a really good question. Oh, I haven't actually thought too much about this, but I'm going to answer it as best as I can. And then I'm going to get new ideas out of that. So I've got to say,
I had multiple of those moments on this conversation, which I haven't had in a while.
oh, brilliant. Good. Well, that's thank you. Well, that's the whole goal. It's just, I want every single person that's either listening to it or involved in the conversation to start thinking, oh, I never really thought about this, but do you know what? I am now, and it's actually going to provide me with a new opportunity, a new idea, some motivation, some inspiration, and actually start contributing to not just myself, but other people's lives in general. So that's the most challenging and exciting part of the whole experience.
You are naturally, I don't know if naturally or through constant execution, but you absolutely crush it. And this was a conversation that got me thinking in a very different realm than I was expecting. And it's, I think, the most helpful part of having a podcast is having an interesting host, and a really wise and aware and also open host. So yeah, this is really satisfying and fulfilling to be on this with you. So you're incredible.
You're making me blush. Yeah, there's definitely some questions I do want to ask you, because I was worried about the question the answer on the other side, but I'm glad I did.
Yeah.
You do worry me sometimes, but that's only because I love you.
Why do I worry you? I'm all right.
So if anyone wants to get in contact with you or learn more, please tell everyone where to find you and about where to find your business as well.
Two places. If you want to find me personally, it is Tyler Jordan 56 on every platform. And then my business is the Nova Haus on every platform. And that is spelled TheNovaHaus, across every platform. We're doing a whole bunch of things on YouTube at the moment, leaning in really heavily there. So we're actually documenting every single day of this business, and we're trying to be as transparent as possible about what it's like to actually have a startup company and be taking the risks that we do every day. So every part of that is actually being documented every single day. So I recommend jumping to that and experiencing those highs and lows and those risks for yourself without actually having to endure them.
Go and live vicariously through Tyler. Perfect.
Yeah, biting your fingernails one day and you're like, oh, and then you're like, oh, we've made it out somehow.
That's right. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on.
Likewise, it's an honor. It is an honor.
I appreciate it. All right, man. Thanks
Cheers.
for jumping on. I'm sure we'll hear more about how you're going soon enough as well. So we'll keep in touch.
Be great.
Easy.
Yeah.